Good morning, grade 7s, and welcome to your mathematics lesson on Friday. I hope you guys are well and have had a good week and are looking forward to an enjoyable long weekend. Just a reminder of the email address on the screen in front of you at the moment, grade7@worksheetcloud.com. Please send me any questions of previous lessons or any content that I haven't covered that perhaps you'd like me to, and I'll get to those questions as soon as possible. Right, today we are changing topics and we're going to be looking at angles in parallel lines. So fractions, decimals, and percentages are a thing of the past now, but I would encourage you to continue to revise those principles that we've spoken about and work through so that you can keep them fresh in your memory. So our normal warm-ups today and finishes, but without any further ado, there is your warm-up activity for the day. Use your math skills to find the value of each symbol, and don't forget to find the question mark at the end. Right, off you go. Okay guys, so I worked this out using trial and error. I started off on the 4th line, and I just thought that 1 would be equal to 1 divided by 1. Okay, so that was my starting point. I then went in and said 15 plus that 1. Okay, so I know that the skull and the headrest, Indian headrest, must be equal to 16. Okay, and then I thought, right, let me just try the number 7. Okay, so if I use number 7 at the top for the jugs, then the skull is going to equal 14. Okay, why number 7? I just chose 7 because I saw the number 14 on the second line over here, and I knew that 7 plus 7 was equal to 14. Okay, so therefore I know that the jug is the same number, so that's the reason why I tried the number 7. Then I've got 7 minus 7 equals 14 minus 14, so that line is correct. Okay, so then I must have 14 add 2 to get to 16. All right, and then my question at the bottom is 2 multiplied by 2, which equals 4. Okay, right, I hope you guys worked through that one, and remember, it's really good if you work through it using a trial and error method. The number might not work, but it's great if you went back and you kept trying to solve it instead of giving up. So good on you, well done. Your mental maths questions for today are again based on previous principles. So off you go and try those 5 questions and then press play to see how you got on with them. Percent of 200 Rand. So we have options here when we work this out. You can either say 15 over 100 multiplied by 200 over 1. Okay, and then we can cancel because we know 100 goes into 100 once and into 200 twice, and then we multiply the numerators. 15 multiplied by 2 is equal to 30 Rand. Okay, that's your first option. Your second option is to work out 10% of 200 Rand equals 20 Rand, and we can just do that by dividing 200 by 10. So if I know 10%, I know 5% is 10 Rand, and then I just add them up, and 15% is equal to 30 Rand. Okay? Okay, cool. Right, question 2. 1 meter costs 1 Rand 50. And it doesn't matter 1 meter of what, it's just, you can put anything in there really, but 1 meter costs you 1 Rand 50. Find the cost of 10 centimeters. So here I would go 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. So therefore 1 Rand 50 is equal to 100 centimeters. Okay, that's 150 cents. So I just want to take out the decimal just to make it a little bit clearer for me. And then I just divide by 10 to get from 100 to 10. So I must divide 150 by 10, and that's going to give me 15 cents. Now I can check that, because if 10 centimeters is 15 cents, then to get from 10 centimeters to a meter, I must multiply by 10. So therefore I must multiply the 15 cents by 10, which gives me 150 cents, which is your R1.50. Okay. Question 3 asks you, what percentage of 6 Rand is R1.50? And again, what I would say is convert the rands to cents. So you've got 150 cents over 600 cents. Okay. Now I need to get to an amount out of 100. So I need my denominator to be 100. Okay. Now I can divide 600 by 6 to get to 100. Okay. And therefore I must divide 150 by 6. Because whatever I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. And how do I know if 150 can actually be divided by 6? So this is where your divisibility rules can become really handy. And my divisibility rule for 6 is, if the number is even and divisible by 3, then the number is divisible by 6. So we know we can divide 600 by 6, and that's going to give us 100. But can we divide 150 by 6? Okay, so it is even. So the first part of the rule applies. And is 150 divisible by 3? So if you recall, the divisibility rule for 3 is if I add the individual digits up, so 1 plus 5 plus 0, okay, I don't really need to add the 0, and that equals 6. If this number here is divisible by 3, which it is, 6 is divisible by 3, then this whole number up here, 150, is going to be divisible by 3. Okay? So it's even and divisible by 3, so therefore it's divisible by 6. Okay, so we can go 150 divided by 6 is equal to 15. Okay? So 120 divided by 6 is 20, and then we're left with 30 divided by 6 is 5, so the answer is 25. Sorry, I think I might have said 15 originally, so my mistake. So that's 25, and we know that 25 over 100 is equal to 1/4. Okay, and then I can just check that. If I multiply 25 by 6, does it get me 150? Yes, it does. And if I multiply 100 by 6, does it get me 600? Yes, it does. And the only thing left to do there is convert 1/4 to a percentage. And we know that 1/4 of a percentage is 25%. Okay? So R1.50 is 25% of 6 Rand. Okay. Then your question 4 is, what fraction in its lowest term is equal to 12.5%. So I'm going to put 12.5% as a fraction of a percentage. I would like to get rid of the decimal, so I'm going to multiply by 10 and get 125 over 1,000, because whatever I do to the numerator, I must do to the denominator. Okay, and then it's just a case of how many times does 125 go into 1,000, and that is 1/8. Okay, so you could have gone and divided by 25 first. You could have gone and then divided again, but you can also recognize that 125 goes into 1,000 8 times. Okay, and then your last question is to put these fractions in order. All right, so I've got 2/3. I've got 3/4, 5 over 6, and 3 over 8. And your lowest common denominator of those 4 numbers is going to be 24. Okay, so 3 goes into 24 8 times. 8 times 2 is 16. Okay, 4 goes into 24 6 times, so 6 times 3 is 18. 6 goes into 24 4 times, so 4 times 5 is 20. And your last one, 8 goes into 24 3 times, so 3 times 3 is 9. Okay? And they've asked for descending order, so we start with the biggest fraction. So we know 5 over 6 comes first because 20 over 24 would be the biggest fraction. Then we'd have to have 3/4 because 18 over 24 is your next biggest one. Then 2/3 because 16 comes next. And then 3 over 8. Okay? Great. I hope you guys remember those past principles that we've covered. Let's move on to our main topic for today. Okay, so today we're going to be having a look at angles, and more specifically angles in parallel lines. All right? So just quickly before we start with angles, guys, I'm expecting you to know different types of angles. So acute, obtuse, right angle, reflex angle, straight line angle. I'm expecting you to know that from grade 5 and 6. I'm also expecting you to know how to use a protractor, how to measure angles, and I'm expecting you to know how to name angles. Okay? I will cover those again if need be. But I'm hoping you guys remember that work from grade 5 and 6. So angles in parallel lines. First of all, just a recap on what are parallel lines. So parallel lines are two lines that are equidistant. So they are always in the same distance apart. They never touch. They're going in the same direction. So a great example is train tracks. Okay, so train tracks are parallel to each other, the two parts of the train track. They are always the same distance apart and they never meet. Okay, so there's a third parallel line. Is it parallel? There's a question mark there. Yes, it is. And how do we know all three lines are parallel? Okay, that's indicated by the single arrowheads on each line. Okay, so those three lines are parallel. I then cut those three lines with two transversal lines. Okay, so don't worry too much about the word transversal. Basically, it means it's a line going across another line. So now you can see on those two vertical lines, there are two arrowheads, and that means that those two lines are parallel. Okay, right, so let's move on. So there's the first angle that's being created by those lines crossing each other. So which angles would be the same as the red angle, and how many are there? Okay, and you're quite correct if you had said that those angles would all be equal. All right, and we'll get into those properties soon. But what I'm looking at for this slide is for you to tell me that those two angles are equal, okay? And those two angles are called vertically opposite angles because they're vertically opposite each other, all right? And then all the rest of those angles will also be equal because they are vertically opposite. Okay, so the first type of angles we're looking at are vertically opposite angles, and they are equal. Then you get a green angle. Now that green angle, the question there is how would you calculate that green angle? Okay, and how would you calculate the second green angle? And you're quite correct in saying that all those angles are going to be equal to green. And how would we work that out is, first of all, we know that vertically opposite angles, so there you've got 30 degrees equals 30 degrees. Okay, here's another example. How would I figure out the question mark? So you can see now which of the angles are going to be vertically opposite each other, and that question mark is going to be 20 degrees. Okay, so how did we know those angles, the green angles, how did we work them out? Well, we should know in grade 7 that angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. So if I've got a 30-degree angle as indicated, then the angle next to it is going to be 150, purely because angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. Okay, and there you can see the angles on the straight line making up 180 degrees. And the last point is that all those angles around the point will equal 360 degrees. So there's a little bit of a recap for you from previous work that you should have learned. Right, so the first type of angle we get into when we're talking about parallel lines is called a corresponding angle. Okay, corresponding angles are those two angles there. So corresponding angles are also called F angles, and the reason they're called F angles is because if you drew on the lines like that have been highlighted on your screen right now, you can see the letter F. And F angles are always under the arms of the F, okay? And they are always equal, but they are only equal if those two lines are parallel, okay? So here's another example. If that red angle is 30 degrees and you can draw in that shape of an F, then you know that that second angle is also equal to 30 degrees because those two lines are parallel. Okay, now the F can go in a forward direction. It can also go back to front or backwards as indicated on the screen now. And it can also go upside down. Okay, as long as you can draw in the letter F, then you know that those angles under the arms are equal because the two lines that make up the arms of the F are parallel. Okay, then we get on to alternate angles. Okay, and again, we need two parallel lines, and again, we need a transversal. Notice that the transversal is not parallel to any of the other lines. All right, and here we are looking at those two green angles. Now, those two green angles are equal, and they are equal because alternate angles, which are called Z angles, there you can see my Z, they are equal because those two lines are parallel. Okay, so another example for you, if that angle is 150, then you're quite right in saying, oh, look, there's the Z. So therefore, the second angle under the arm of the Z is equal to 150. I sometimes call them armpit angles because, you know, we're talking about them being under the arms, and what's under your arm is an armpit. So if you want to call them armpit angles or smelly angles, because, I don't know, maybe after you've exercised, your armpits are smelly, I'm not too sure, but you got to use things like this to kind of remind yourself about those angles. So those Z angles are equal because the lines are parallel. And just like the corresponding angles, the Z doesn't have to always be written normally. It can be back to front, upside down. As long as those two arms are parallel, then your armpit angles or your angles under the arms of the Z are equal. Your next type of angle is called a supplementary angle. Now you get supplementary angles which add up to 180, and you also get complementary angles. Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. Okay. Supplementary angles are also called co-interior angles, and that's, or sometimes they're also, called U angles because they make the letter U, and there's the letter U there, but you can also argue and say, hey, so they also make the letter C, okay, and that's where the co-interior comes in. All right, so supplementary angles add up to 180. They are not equal. Okay, so your alternate, your corresponding, they are equal, but your co-interior or supplementary or U angles, they add up to 180. Okay, so please recognize the difference and remember that. And again, they can also go in any direction as long as those arms are parallel. Okay, so those armpit angles are going to add up to 180. So 30 and 150 is 180. And there's just an example of angles on a straight line also being supplementary. So that's where the T angle comes in, but you guys already know that angles on a straight line add up to 180. Okay, so supplementary add up to 180, complementary add up to 90. Okay, so just a little recap and a little reminder before you guys work on some yourself. Vertically opposite angles are equal. Corresponding angles are equal because the arms are parallel. Alternate angles are equal because the arms are parallel. And remember, the angles are the armpit angles. And we know that supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. And they can be called co-interior angles or U angles. And let's not forget that angles on a straight line add up to 180. Okay, your turn. I'd like you to press pause and go work out the sizes of the angles marked with a letter. So you've got ABC, you've got GHI, and you've got ABC for the middle one in the bottom. Please recognize the parallel lines, and let's see how you guys go in figuring those out. Right, off you go. Working through those, I must be honest and say I quite enjoy hunting for angles, which is what we're going to do now. So let's go with question on the top left. So we're looking for A, and the first thing we should say is we know that angles on a straight line add up to 180. So therefore A is going to equal 110 degrees. Okay. Okay, and then I like to fill in the angles that I know. I know that B is going to be equal to 110, okay, and that's going to be, and I'll just draw it in there with a different color, okay, there is my upside down F, okay, and I know that these angles under the armpits there are going to be equal, okay, and I suppose I could do exactly the same thing with this side, and I can draw in my F there, and then I know that that angle is equal to 70. Now it's important to notice that there's more than one way of working these angles out. Okay, you could have gone and worked out vertically opposite angles are equal. So you could have said that this angle here, okay, was going to be 70 because it's vertically opposite. All right. And then you could have said, oh, look, I found some alternate angles. There's your Z angle, okay? And you know that C and this angle under that armpit are going to be equal. So you would know that C is 70, and then you could have worked out B to be 110 if you had worked out C first. So I don't really think it matters what order you work out the angles in. As long as your reasoning is correct, then you should be good. Okay, but there's more than one way to figure out these answers. Second one, which I've enlarged for you, and straight away you're more than likely saying that G is 104 because it's vertically opposite. So quite often when you get asked to work out these angles, they'll ask you, what is your reason? Okay, so there you would say vertically opposite angles are equal. Okay, so VO, vertically opposite, that is your abbreviation for the word angles, and I've just put an apostrophe S, and then they're equal. Okay, maybe your teachers will want you to write out vertically opposite, and then angles are equal. Okay, so those are your options. Okay, and then if G is equal to 104, then we can have a look at some parallel angles. And if we have a look here, there is a Z. So we know that H is going to be equal to 104. So you would write H equals 104 degrees. Okay, and then your reason would be alternate, and alternate abbreviated as ALT, alternate angles are equal. Okay, and then you can work out I is going to be 76 because angles on a straight line add up to, there's your straight line angles, they add up to 180, so 76 and 104 is 180. And again, guys, you could have worked out something else first. You could have said, okay, there's an upside down F, so I know that H is going to be 104 because my armpit angles are equal, okay? And then you could have gone and worked out Z, okay, to be, the Z angles, so G and H are equal. You could have worked out this F angle first, all right? And then G and this angle are going to be equal, okay? What's important to note here is the co-interior angles of G and I add up to 180, okay? So this G, as we said, was 104, and I is 76, and there you can see your co-interior angles G and I are supplementary, okay? So there's a nice example of that for you. Right, and then your last one that you needed to work out is the one on the bottom left, okay? Let's move that other one out the way. Okay, and here you can again start off where you think is best. I'm going to have a look at an alternate angle. Okay, there it is there. So I know that A is equal to 60 because alternate angles are equal. All right. I'm then going to have a look at this angle here. C is going to be equal to 65 degrees again because alternate angles are equal. And then I can work out B because I know that angles on a straight line are going to add up to 180, and those are my straight line angles. So 180 minus 65 is going to be 115 degrees. Okay. You are quite correct in saying that B and C are co-interior angles or U angles or supplementary angles. So B and C need to add up to 180, and you can see 115 and 65 are equal to 180. Okay, so a couple of ways to work out missing angles. Just make sure that your reasoning is spot on, and then you can explain your reasoning, and then you should be okay. We'll have a look at a few more of these next week. Okay, guys, so all that's left for you for today is your finisher. It's a decimal finisher, so this is a little bit different to what we normally do. 2 of those statements are correct, 1 is incorrect. You need to tell me which one is incorrect and why. Off you go. Okay, guys, so there are your 3 statements. So if I put my numbers back in there, for number 1, I've got 0,1 multiplied by 5 equals 0,5. Right, and if we want to prove that, we can say 1 over 10 times 5 over 1, and that is equal to 5 over 10, which equals a half, and we know that a half equals 0,5. Okay, so we know that that one is correct. We'll give it a nice green tick. Your second one is 0,1 multiplied by the blueberries. Let's chuck that into a different color. So 0,1 multiplied by 12. And again, if you wanted to prove it, then we could have 12 over 10. And we know that 12 divided by 10 is 1,2. So we'll give that a nice red tick. So you should be thinking to yourself straight away that C is incorrect, but it's always good to prove it. And we'll use yellow. So 0,1 multiplied by 25 equals 0,25. So let's prove it. Right, and then we'll have 25 over 10, and that equals 2,5. So we know that this is your false statement. Okay, so well done if you remember those and you worked through them and you identified the incorrect statement. Okay guys, there's your 24 finisher for today. Again, use each number on each card and use add, subtract, multiply, divide to see if you can come up with the answer of 24. So on the first card you got 9, 1, 5 and 6. You can either add them all together. So I've said 9 plus 1 plus 5 plus 6. You're left with 21, so I've got the wrong amount. I might say 5 multiplied by 6 is 30, minus 9, 21 plus 1, 22. Okay, still incorrect. So you got to keep working through those numbers with your various operations until you come up with the answer of 24. And remember, the second part of the challenge is how many different ways you can come up with the answer of 24. Okay, grade 7s, thanks very much for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. Don't forget about the online activity waiting for you on WorksheetCloud.com, and it's accompanied by a memo. I'll see you guys next week, and please email me any questions you have. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to answering some questions over the weekend, and I'll catch you guys next week. All the best, guys. Cheers.